and it's all yours.
All right, thank you. And Shauna, as soon as I get done here, I'll pack up and get in the car, go get mom, and then we're headed your way. Yeah. Hi, everybody. I know what's wrong. I was sitting there like, something's off. What's off? I know what's wrong. I forgot to shift to gallery, and I'm sitting here looking at me instead of you. There we go. That feels more natural. So, hey, everybody. It is good to see you. I'm not pissed off this week. I'm fine. However, I did hear from a few people really enjoyed Pissed Off Regina. And it really wasn't Pissed Off Regina. It was, as we saw, Pissed Off Ego. There wasn't anything in the world to even project it onto, which was quite interesting. Because, usually when we feel like we're angry, we think we're angry at someone or something, right? There is something in the world to project it onto. And in this case, there wasn't. So it was very clear what the problem was. There was no confusion. We're here again for 7 steps to awakening and out of the stillness. And I don't feel like I have anything at all to say. So we might as well just jump right in. Otherwise, I would share whatever I had to share, but nothing's coming to mind. So today we're going to start with number 471. (471) says, "This body is but pure void. It seems to exist on account of the mental conditioning. When the latter ceases, the body ceases to be seen or experienced, just as the dream object is not experienced on waking up." So what we're going to do is look at how I contemplated this. It's in Out of the Stillness at number 471. I just got a peek at what that was going to say, and I feel like I just want to read this one more time and emphasize something before we go into it. Again, out of the 7 steps to awakening, number 471 says, "This body is but pure void." And then it says, "It seems to exist on account of the mental conditioning." And the reason I wanted to bring that back is because it looks like that's probably what I focused on in the contemplation, that the body seems to exist on account of the mental conditioning. When the latter ceases, the body ceases to be seen or experienced, just as the dream object is not experienced on waking up. Okay, so 471 then, as we saw, I'm going to focus on the mental conditioning and out of the stillness. Background thoughts. And by background thoughts, this is what people would normally call subconscious or unconscious. One thing that I discovered fairly early on the spiritual path, I don't know exactly when, but sometime in that first 4 years, is that there really wasn't such a thing as a subconscious or an unconscious thought. As I started uncovering different thoughts that I was believing, what I came to see is that they did show up in consciousness very quickly, right? They showed up in conscious very quickly. I very quickly believed them, and then they disappeared. One example that's coming to mind, so I'll share this one. When I lived in North Carolina, I had a different dog. I had Jamie, and Jamie was pretty much an outside dog at that time. And there was a dog next door named Zeke, and they kept Zeke in this little bitty cage outside, but small. And so I got their permission to bring Zeke every day and put him in my backyard and let him play with Jamie all day. And they loved it. They were best of friends. So one morning I was getting ready to go get Zeke, or I just gotten back from getting Zeke. I don't remember what it was. I was just doing normal morning routine stuff. And I saw this thought. I just remember I was at the door. I was either going out the door or coming in the door from getting Zeke. And this thought crossed my mind, this is hell. And I saw it. And I suddenly realized it had been there. You know, I won't say always, and it probably wasn't there when I was 5, but it had been there, you know, all of my adult life at least. This is hell thought, just whatever I'm doing, you know, doing dishes, this is hell, you know, going to work, this is hell, having to wake up to an alarm, this is hell, having to go take a shower, this is hell. I mean, like, you know, and it may not have always had those exact same words, but it always had that exact same flavor, right? And it had always been there, and it was creating a general negative attitude toward whatever it was I needed to be doing. And it wasn't, what I clearly saw is it wasn't unconscious. I just hadn't seen it. That's different. But it was showing up in consciousness. I was buying into it, and it was going away so fast, and I wasn't noticing it. You know, when I saw this thought this day at the back door, this is hell, I was like, I mean, I felt like I had, you know, kind of like last week, busted the ego, like busted, I see you, I see you, I see you, I see you. And from that point forward, that thought never had an effect on me, which is probably one of the reasons I'm so generally happy. Because the primary thought that makes you kind of trudge through life, right? Like you're pushing through life, became exposed. And so I didn't have to push through life anymore, because it was just a thought that I believed over and over and over and over again. And I saw that. Yay. But anyway, the reason I told that story is because this particular entry starts with background thoughts. Notice it doesn't say unconscious thoughts. It doesn't say subconscious thoughts. Because by this point, this is, you know, after that story I just told you, by now I'm living in Pueblo. So by this point, I fully accept that these thoughts aren't really subconscious, which let me tell you one more thing about that. I was also really, really happy to discover that, because when I had the idea that there were subconscious thoughts that I never saw that were running me, I felt like a victim. How am I going to heal a thought I never see? How am I going to heal a thought I'm not aware of? You know, I felt like a victim. And so when I realized on this day, when this is hell thought showed up, when I realized on this day, oh my God, they do show up in consciousness, I actually felt somewhat free for that purpose as well, because I realized that when it was time, everything I needed to see would show up. And I would have an opportunity to realize it, let go of it, right? The proper insight would always show up. I was not the victim to anything unconscious or subconscious that I would never, ever be aware of, and therefore it would always run me. So I felt very, very free also on that day of realization. So again, that's why number 471 and out of the stillness starts with background thoughts. Because now that's what I see them as. I see them as in the background. They're not in the foreground. They're not that friggin' obvious, right? They're in the background, but they do come up in consciousness. So background thoughts combined with the seeing and believing loop. The seeing and believing loop is where they swoop up and you believe them once again. You know, this is hell. Oh God, I got to go to work. Oh God, I got to wash my hair. Oh God, I got it, right? I mean, it shows up over and over again. I believe it over and over again without ever seeing myself believe it. So background thoughts combined with the seeing and believing loop are the cause of an apparent world and apparent self. Background thoughts combined with the seeing and believing loop are the cause of an apparent world and apparent self. Background thoughts include, and of course, you know, I'm in contemplation. So I'm basically asking, you know, what are some of these background thoughts? And then as they show up, I'm writing them down. So one of these background thoughts is, I am this, right? That's one of these thoughts that we just accept over and over and over again. And, you know, some of the ways I am this shows up is just seeing, you know, your face in the mirror and accepting that's me, right? So I am this is one of these background thoughts that shows up over and over and over and over again, probably multiple times a day in different forms, that we continue to see and believe, see and believe. I am not that, right? I am not that. You know, in a way that the I am not that thought shows up is just thinking about somebody else as somebody else, right? Could be anybody. But there's an I am not that flavor to the way the thinking is occurring. This is my world. That's a thought that basically sees the world as reality, and I am a part of that reality. And that, again, can show up in all kinds of ways, in innocent ways, such as you see something on the news, you know, you see, it's hard for me to think of examples. I'll go to the past. You know, remember when COVID-19 first came out and everything started closing down, you know, this is my world would have caused you to feel affected, right? This is my world. This is happening to me, right? This would cause you to feel affected by all of that instead of unaffected by all of that. This blank is mine, and it has more value than that which is not mine. In other words, I care a whole lot more about a dent in my car than I do a dent in your car. True? I care a whole lot more about my bank account being low than your bank account being low, or about whatever my little health problem is as compared to your little health problem, or my child compared to your child, right? So this is mine, and it has more value than that which is not mine. It's more important. So these were some of the common background thoughts that are constantly running, that we are constantly buying into, that are not unconscious. They show up in our mind in different ways, and we buy into them over and over and over again. Because background thoughts project as the body world experience, the body world experience vanishes when background thoughts are abandoned. Now, that is just me contemplating the quote. That is not me speaking from experience, right? But this is what the quote is saying. So here's me now talking to myself after this insight, after this contemplation. Watch for the appearance of these background thoughts in any form. How often do they appear? How quickly are they given belief? Is there a pause that interrupts the seeing, believing loop now? Is there wisdom in the pause? Well, let me give you an example, because you know how grace is. Something like this actually just happened to me in the minutes, the seconds before I started teaching, before I even looked at this. I just cleaned the house, which you guys have heard I often do on Wednesday. I just cleaned the house, and I happened to finish cleaning just in time to come in here and teach. But when I sat down, and I'm going to La Vida right after, as soon as I finish teaching, I'm going to pack up and leave, right? So there wouldn't have been any more time to do any more cleaning because I have somewhere else to go. So just as I sat down in this chair to teach, this thought showed up in my mind that said something like, you know, oh, you know, Ron's going to think I'm such a good housekeeper. I mean, that wasn't the exact thought, but it had something to do with Ron approving of how good I did at cleaning the house, right? Something like that. I don't remember the exact words, but here's what happened in me. Pride. I just labeled it pride and dropped it. So basically what has happened is I have learned to notice these thoughts and call them out, right? And when you call it out, it becomes ineffectual, right? It becomes ineffectual. And this, what we're reading here, of course, many years ago, is where I'm giving myself the assignment to start doing that. Instead of just letting these thoughts run, oh, you know, Ron's going to think I'm a good housekeeper, or whatever that thought was. Instead of letting those thoughts run, catch them and just call them out. and then they're dead. They have no effect. They're dead. So I think it's funny that that happened just before I sat down. It's probably good that it happened just before I sat down, because otherwise I might have had trouble coming up with an example. It's kind of like the picture in the book, right? So watch for the appearance of these background thoughts in any form. Now, again, these background thoughts are things like, I am this, I am not that, this is my world, this blank is mine, and it has more value than that which is not mine. But those aren't the only ones. You know, this, how would we label this thought that just came? It was a thought about how I am perceived, I would say, right? It was trying to project an image to someone else, right? So there are more of these types of thoughts than just the 4 I listed here. So one thing you could do if you wanted to is start a list of these types of thoughts. You know, you don't have to list the specifics, because there'd be way too many specifics to list. Look for the generic bucket that you can throw them into, right? The generic bucket. Oh, there was trying to project an image. Oh, there was thinking something of mine was very important, seeing something as mine. Oh, there I was thinking I am not that, you know, or whatever. You know, contemplate what buckets you might have that are constantly running in different ways. I am not good enough, certainly would be one, right? I am unsafe, certainly would be one. And then, you know, just start trying to label them, point at them, and just say, that's a whatever thought. Just call it out. And then you're done with it, right? Then you're done with it. And that way you're interrupting that seeing, believing loop instead of just believing it again. So watch for the appearance of these background thoughts in any form. I don't think I really want to be seen as a good housekeeper. I think I can pick something bigger than that. That's not a very lofty self-image, is it? This kind of hit me as funny, but obviously it's one of them. And actually, I am a good housekeeper. I can't help it. That's my natural tendency. It's just natural. Like I can't help it. I did when Laurent lived with me. I gave it up for that period of time and learned to be at peace with the house not being clean. But once that period of time was over, I just naturally went back to my natural tendency, you know? So watch for the appearance of these background thoughts in any form. How often do they appear? How quickly are they given belief? And this is what I was pointing out. Is there a pause that interrupts the seeing, believing loop now? And so that was what my story, the pride story, was about, was the pause. That, you know, that's breaking up that ongoing automatic believing. Is there wisdom in the pause, right? So that's 471, and I think that's about all I have to say about that. Now it looks like the next one that I have highlighted is 479. Oh, yes, Lynn.
I guess there's no real way to know this, but I was thinking, at what point does an infant grow up enough to have these kind of thoughts? And prior to that, we can't know this. What are they seeing?
Yeah.
They're not into any of that, one would guess.
Yeah, well, I can't answer all of that. You know, as a person who has had the experience of being a mother, I can answer part of that. Definitely these thoughts start showing up when they're 2. That's why we call it the terrible 2s. They start acting mine, and, you know, no, I don't want to do that. And, you know, all that stuff starts getting acted out, and it isn't acted out at earlier ages. So we don't know how they see before then, but we do know that somewhere around age 2, these types of thoughts start running.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. The terrible 2s. Ego is making itself known. I said something to someone the other day about his grandchild. I said to him, I said, oh, he is so, because he really is adorable. I said, oh, he is so cute. And he said, he's two. With a frown on his face.
He's two.
He's not as cute as he was when he was one. I didn't say all that stuff.
That's priceless.
All right, so 479, I think I said. Yep, 479. When sleep has ceased, the world appearance rises. When that ceases, there is pure consciousness. That nothing, which remains after everything has been negated as not this, is pure consciousness. So clearly what this particular quote is pointing to is the practice of neti neti. And in case you guys don't know what this practice is, I've primarily used it in meditation. I haven't done it in years, but I have done it before. And when I did it in meditation, you know how when you're meditating, how your attention will go to some type of thought stream. Well, I knew that my purpose in meditation was to focus on the real self. And so when attention would go to some story, whatever the story of the day was, you know, I'm a good housekeeper or whatever, I would say, not this to it. And then return to focusing on the true self to the best of my ability at the time. So neti neti is calling out everything that's not truth as not truth, right? That's what neti neti is, not this, right? We're saying this is not truth, this is not truth. And you can do that with thoughts at any time. So, you know, it's another way to call it out. You know, like I called out that one thought earlier as pride. You know, that was breaking up that seeing believing loop. You could look at a thought and not even go so far as to throw it in a bucket. If you find your head is getting too involved in what bucket should this go in, right? Then you could just practice neti neti. You could just say neti neti, if you can remember that, or you could just say not this, or you could say not this, or you could say ego, or you could say distraction, or, you know, whatever works for you. The point is to break that seeing believing loop. I may have gone over this entry and out of the stillness with you. I don't remember, but I do remember it coming. There was one time when I was contemplating the 7 steps to awakening, and I saw a pinwheel like I used to play with when I was a kid. You know how those pinwheels, when the wind is blowing, they're just going round and round and round and round. And what happened was, as I was contemplating, there was this finger that kind of showed up, and this is all going on just in my mind's eye. This finger that showed up and would go into the pinwheel and kind of slow it down, and then go in and poke it again and kind of slow it down, and then go in and poke it again and slow it down. And eventually the pinwheel stopped, you know, from this finger poking it. And what I understood was the finger represented these pauses in the seeing believing continuum. Right? So the pinwheel represented the seeing believing continuum. I'm such a loser. I'm a dumbass. I'm fat. I'm such a pig, right? We just believe it, believe it, believe it. But then the finger, however we do it, the finger is like, oh, that's the I am bad thought. Oh, that's me judging myself. You know, whatever we do, when we do that, it's like poking the finger at the seeing believing loop. And eventually that seeing believing loop stops, and we keep poking the finger into it. So 479. When sleep has ceased, the world appearance rises. When that ceases, there is pure consciousness. That nothing which remains everything has been negated as not this, is pure. That nothing which remains after everything has been negated as not this, is pure consciousness. So not this, is another type of finger, right? That's just going in and breaking up the seeing believing loop. And again, one thing I love, you know, again, when I'm listening to you all, and you don't know it. I love to hear how all of you, through your own inner wisdom, come up with your own little ways of doing this. You know, like I can tell you, well, this, you know, this thought showed up for me. I don't know who this is, but if it's Nisargadatta or who, but you know, whoever this is saying, not this is something they practiced. Right. I might say calling it by its name, because that's what I was taught. You'll even find that at NTI. It'll say, call it by its name. I was taught to say, okay, pride, I am bad belief, you know, whatever, call it by its name. Hatred, call it by its name. So that's something I did to poke my finger into the pinwheel. You may be guided to do something else that none of us have said, right? There may be something else that comes up for you to do. But what's interesting is that the actual mechanism, even though our individual ways of doing it appear different, the actual mechanism is the same. The actual mechanism is stopping that automatic seeing and believing from happening, right? It's that pause. It's that finger poking the pinwheel. So again, neti, not this is one way of doing that. But there are other ways of doing it as well. Obviously, the most unhelpful thing we can do for ourselves is just keep seeing and believing and not doing anything to try and pause it, right? Or watch it or notice it or see it as untrue. Yeah. So I'll read this quote one more time and then we'll look and see what I said in Out of the Stillness. When sleep has ceased, the world appearance rises. When that ceases, there is pure consciousness. That nothing, which remains after everything has been negated as not this, is pure consciousness. So that finger completely stopped the pinwheel. All right, so let's look at Out of the Stillness. Is beingness the same as being conscious? Does beingness end when I am unconscious, such as in deep sleep or under anesthesia? It's true that I'm not conscious in deep sleep or under anesthesia, but beingness does not end. Beingness continues even then. Okay, so I can see what I'm contemplating in this. Let me point out what I'm contemplating, and then we'll go back and continue reading. So what I'm contemplating is this part where he says that nothing which remains. That's what I'm looking at. What is that nothing? That's the part that jumped out at me that I am contemplating in Out of the Stillness. That nothing which remains. So I'm saying, what is that nothing? So is beingness the same as being conscious? That's what I'm asking myself. Does beingness end when I am unconscious, such as in deep sleep or under anesthesia? It's true that I'm not conscious in deep sleep.
Is there something I can grab for you?
Oops, I think somebody's mic is open. It's true that I'm not conscious in, you know, my joking mind says, yeah, give me a candy bar.
Perfect.
All right, we got that taken care of, Shauna? Okay. It's true that I'm not conscious in deep sleep or under anesthesia, but beingness does not end. Beingness continues even then. Without conscious mind, beingness keeps the body going. Breathing happens, the heart pumps blood, the cells are active, fulfilling their functions. It's clear that there is beingness beyond conscious mind. Now, I've told you guys before that somewhere when contemplating the 7 steps to awakening, I realized the 4 principles of God. It's possible that we're there. Okay, I can't say that for a fact, but I kind of feel it like right here. Because what's happening is I'm contemplating what is that nothing that's left after everything has been negated. You know, I'm starting to see that I thought of being conscious. Like if I take away my thoughts, right? Take away my emotions, and there's just this clear consciousness, conscious awareness. I thought that was it. And now, and so I thought that's really, that was all I had to do. I had to get to the point where, you know, the mind stops. And of course, if the mind stops, the emotions stop. And then there's just this clear seeing, kind of like, Lynn, what you were pointing to, like maybe how a newborn baby is, right? Conscious, but just that seeing, no thoughts yet, no thinking yet, no labels yet, right? None of that's there yet. I kind of thought that state as an adult would be full truth realization. But what I'm seeing in this contemplation is, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. You know, I already know that masters like Nisargadatta Maharaj and Ramana Maharshi are very, very clear. Even my own inner wisdom was very, very clear that whatever is real, whatever that word real points to, has no beginning and no end. It's constant. And what's happening here is I'm going, shit, consciousness is not constant. I am not conscious when I'm under anesthesia. I am not conscious when I'm in deep sleep. Therefore, that, even that pure mind, completely silent mind, human consciousness can't be it. Whatever they are talking about, this nothing that is absolute truth, must be prior to consciousness. And last week, if you guys remember, when I came in here and the ego was all pissed off, what I had just seen was that consciousness is dual itself. Because in consciousness, when we are awake, like not in bed sleeping, you know, I'm not talking about spiritually awake, just everyday awake. When we are awake, we are self-aware. Now look at this. Aware, self-aware, that self is aware. That's duality. I just realized that last week. That's why the ego was all pissed off. Well, this is kind of not as deep, but this is kind of me going in that same direction. I'm starting to realize I always thought that all I had to do was somehow get the mind to stop thinking. And that would be, when I didn't know the term first principle of God yet, because I'd never gone beyond what I now call the second principle of God, but that would be it. And now what's starting to happen, I'm starting to say, wait a minute. No, that's not it. It can't be it. It can't be it, because I am not always conscious now. And they are telling me that whatever this truth is constant. And being conscious is not constant. Something's wrong here, you know, something's wrong here. This is what I'm starting to realize. So this might be where I started to hit upon the realization of the 4 principles of God. But I can't say that for sure. But let's just read this again now that I said that. Is beingness the same as being conscious? Does beingness end when I am unconscious, such as in deep sleep or under anesthesia? It's true that I'm not conscious in deep sleep or under anesthesia. But beingness does not end. See, I'm saying there's something there. There's something there that is not consciousness. There's not being conscious, right? It's true that I'm not conscious in deep sleep or under anesthesia, but beingness does not end. Beingness continues even then. Without conscious mind, beingness keeps the body going. Breathing happens. The heart pumps blood. The cells are active, fulfilling their functions. It's clear that there is beingness beyond the conscious mind. Now, that may not sound like much to you, but for me then, that was, uh-oh. Uh-oh. Remember, I've talked to you before about the false peak, right? When you're hiking, you think you see the peak, and then you get up there and you go, uh-oh, there's this other peak I couldn't see because it was hidden behind this lower peak. I'm starting to realize that what I thought was all the way is a false peak. There's something else. There's something else beyond purity while conscious, right? There's something else. So let's read 480. Oh, yes, go ahead, Lynn.
This may be being picky, but when I hear the word beingness, just because of our language and our use of it, it implies a being.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, for me, when I say isness, there's
Yes.
no boundary or frame around it.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's the whole thing about words. Words suck. So I'm totally, so yeah, isness would maybe have been a better word, but for me in this case, the word be and the word is were more equal. I wasn't referring to a being. I was referring to something existing, something being there, right? Is and be in this case would be the same, but I'm totally fine. And I think that, this is why there are so many words. In fact, lately I've been contemplating Bernadette Roberts and Ramana Maharshi side by side. And one morning after having been with Bernadette for like 4 or 5 days, and I went to Ramana Maharshi, I had like this mind wobble because their language is so different. Bernadette refers to what I call the second principle of God as the true self. Ramana Maharshi refers to what I call the first principle of God as the true self. So like when I was switching from reading one person for 3 or 4 days to the other, I went to this little mind wobble until okay, I got, I'm straight again. That's the thing about words. They really, really suck. Right. So, but yeah, isness is another good word. Isness would be very appropriate for what beingness is pointing to here. Thank you. All right, so let's go to 480. In the vision of the knowers of the truth, there is nothing other than pure and infinite consciousness. Now, see, they're using the word consciousness. And consciousness here does not mean being conscious. See how words suck? It doesn't mean that because they're saying infinite consciousness, right? So in the vision of the knowers of the truth, there is nothing other than the pure and infinite consciousness. And the objective universe is completely and totally non-existent. All right, let's go back to 480 here. And I know I'm going to be on the same wavelength, even though we switched quotes, because I wasn't done with that wavelength. If beingness is present, even when I am not conscious, why do masters refer to beingness or isness as pure consciousness? You can see I'm having that mind wobble right there, right? The words are getting in my way. Pure consciousness. Oh yeah, this is it. This is it. Okay, we found it. Because I'm about to write something here that I did not know 2 seconds ago. What happened in between the first paragraph and the second paragraph was I had an experience. that I have never been able to describe. But in effect, what happened was, for, I don't know, it felt like a nanosecond, I shifted out of being aware of to awareness without aware of. That had never happened to me before. There was nothing to be aware of in my experience. It was almost like a darkness experience, right? Everything vanished for a moment, but there was aware. And again, shit, you know, what do you say to stuff like that? So here I am asking a question. Why do the masters refer to beingness as pure consciousness? I'm totally in mind wobble. I'm totally confused. I have this experience, and then I write the next paragraph. Pure consciousness is being aware without being aware of. That is, it is awareness without perception. I have just discovered what I call the first principle of God. Then I go on with it. Is there consciousness in cells and bodily organs? Yes, right? They're not conscious like humans are conscious, but that pure consciousness, they are, you know, they might even be automated. Like, I don't know what's true. Scientists say they know stuff. I don't know how the heck they think they know some of what they know. But I read some article somewhere where some scientists were saying ants are not aware of. And this was after I'd already discovered the 4 principles of God. So I found the article very interesting. They said ants are automated. You know, when they go out and find their little crumb and bring their little crumb back, they're not like us. Like, we'd be like, oh, look, a crumb. That's what I was looking for. Let me put it on my back and take it back. But they're not like that. They're not aware of. It just happens. They just go out, they get the crumb, they bring it back. Now, I don't know how a scientist would know that, but this is what this article said, right? I mean, how would you know that unless you've been an ant? But that's what the cells and bodily organs are. They have this intelligence, awareness in them, where they operate in the way they're supposed to operate without having to be conscious of anything. Right? Like that pure first principle of God is what makes the cells function, is what makes the bodily organs function, maybe what makes the ant function. You know, Ramana Maharshi, who was awake to the first principle of God, when asked about, you know, moving around with the body, he said it's like sleepwalking. That was his way of describing the automation of the body. Right? Nisargadatta Maharaj said, it's like hair growing. You know, that's how his speaking occurred, like hair growing, right? Is there consciousness in cells and bodily organs? Not being conscious, but this pure consciousness. Yes. Cells and bodily organs are not conscious, like mind is conscious, but there is intelligence that causes the cells and organs to function. Intelligence is awareness. Since intelligence is, there's your word, Lynn, is. Since intelligence is, it can be said to be. There you go. See, I knew years ago that you were going to bring this up, and I have just fixed it in my contemplation. That's funny, don't you think? Since intelligence is, it can be said to be. Therefore, it is being. I can see that pure being and pure consciousness can be used synonymously, and both exist beyond conscious mind. That's, you know, where the 4 principles of God were born. Now, I didn't actually give them those names for, you know, quite some time, because it was quite some time before I started trying to communicate this to anybody. And when I started communicating it, I realized words like consciousness They're not good words because, it means so many things, right? Mind, not good word, means too many things. Even awareness, not good word, means too many things. So I had to make up new words, right? But this is where I realized it. If beingness is present, even when I am not conscious, why do the masters refer to beingness as pure consciousness? Experience. Pure consciousness is being aware without being aware of. Now I know something I didn't know 2 seconds ago. That is, it is awareness without perception. Is there consciousness in cells and bodily organs? Yes. Cells and bodily organs are not conscious like mind is conscious, but there is intelligence that causes the cells and organs to function. Intelligence, not thinking, right? Intelligence is awareness. Since intelligence is, it can be said to be. Therefore, it is being. I can see that pure being and pure consciousness can be used synonymously, and both exist beyond the conscious mind. I'm just going to read 481 real quick. I don't have it highlighted, but I just want to see where I went next after this realization at 480. Where should mind's attention be directed now? Within, on beingness and intuition only. Why? Because if mind's attention is directed outward with interest, the misperception that perception is reality persists. So that's where I went next, is like, I got to spend a whole lot more time inward. Got to spend a whole lot more time focusing attention to the best of my ability towards what is before the conscious mind. Because that's where truth is. That's the key. I'm never going to get it with the conscious mind because it's a different realm entirely. Right? That's what I realized here. It's a different realm entirely. In fact, this will also fit with some of the things I've been saying in the last few weeks. Because one of the first steps on my spiritual path was A Course in Miracles. It wasn't the first, but it was one of the first. And so I learned terms like wrong mind and right mind. And I thought the ego was the wrong mind solely. And I thought awakening would be to be 100% right mind, right? To transcend wrong mind and be only right-minded. And then you would be fully awake. What this is telling me, what this showed me is because right mind is something that happens in conscious mind. And true awakening is beyond conscious mind entirely. We're talking about a whole different realm, a whole different domain, right? It has nothing to do with conscious mind. It's beyond that completely. And so you can see how this kind of floored me. And if you guys remember the story of this day, because there is a story of this day. Well, first of all, I felt like I knew something that nobody else knew. That's exactly how it hit me. Like, oh my God, they don't know this. They don't know this, right? And then either later that day or the next day, I happened to go on Facebook. You've heard this story before. And this group of enlightened people and Bentinho showed up. And Bentinho had just had this exact same realization. And the words he used was, there's something beyond the experiencer. I was using the terms conscious mind. He was using the term experiencer, but I knew he was talking about the same thing I was talking about. And all these enlightened people started attacking him. They were even saying things like, you've lost your mind, you're crazy, you're making stuff up, wow, Bettino, you've lost it. And I'm sitting there going, I know exactly what he's talking about. And I went in and said something. This was a group I never participated in. I read them sometimes, but I never participated. But I went in and said something about, I don't remember what I said. The gist was that he was right, that I knew that I'd had the same realization. And I think I told you they kicked us both out of the group. And years later, there's a talk, a recorded talk where Bentino and I, we had a satsang here in Awakening together, and we talked about this. Later, of course, I realized I wasn't the only one that knew. Me and Bentino, it wasn't just us, I found this later on. I was like, oh my God, that's it, and even later I found Transcending the Levels of Consciousness with Dr. David Hawkins, and I could see where his levels of consciousness go beyond the conscious mind. And I'm like, oh my God, there it is. And I started realizing that there are other people who know this. But there are a lot of people who don't. There are a lot of teachers who have more what we might call reached a level of consciousness that is very pure. In fact, in Hinduism, they call it sattva, right? Very pure. But have you ever studied the Bhagavad Gita? What does it say about sattva? Does anybody know? It's still a dream. That's what Krishna says. This is out there over and over and over again. Clearly, I didn't discover it, but I couldn't see it out there until I discovered it. Does that make sense? Then everywhere I looked, oh my gosh, it's in the Tao. One created two. Two is consciousness, right? Two created three. Three created everything else. Like right there, the four principles of God are in the Tao Te Ching. I could see it everywhere. But not until I realized it myself. So I don't feel like I want to go any further today. I feel like this is this was such a big realization. It feels like a nice place to stop. So what do you all have to say? We have 6 minutes. Go ahead, Len.
I really don't have it formulated, but I'm just feeling this inner tension here. I'm familiar with what the Course says, that no single instant has the body existed at all, that the entire cosmos, beyond what we've even discovered, is all part of the dream. And like you were saying, Ramana says, yeah, level 1 essentially is like sleepwalking.
Yeah.
And everything just happens. And Nisargadatta said that too. And so it almost doesn't matter.
The Course in Miracles, because the Course in Miracles says that heaven is beyond perception entirely.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So when I struggle with ideas like, well, is a rock alive? Is a rock an expression of consciousness? Well, it has to be an expression of consciousness.
Yeah.
Somehow. It doesn't have to have, in my mind, have an intelligence, but it was manifested through consciousness. It didn't come from nowhere.
Yeah.
Anyway, it does get a bit intense in here.
Yeah. Yeah. I will tell you that even after discovering the first principle of God by myself, through my own direct experience, I don't remember how long. It was probably at least a couple of years, if not 3 years, before I felt comfortable enough in that to begin talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. David, I see your hand.
Hi. I just wanted to say, I just wanted to point out, I really love in this conversation, how we look at the multiple different places that wisdom can come through and how it all points back to this one truth. We're looking at the principles of God at ACIM, at Bettina Massaro, and Nisargadatta Maharaj, the Bhagavad Gita. I just wanted to really emphasize, I love that about Awakening Together, that we look at the multiple different paths and see that one thread of wisdom that is coalescing in all of them. I really appreciate this. Thank you for letting me witness it.
Well, and the truth is, what I realize now is if I had been the only one to know that, it wouldn't have been truth. Right? There isn't anything new in truth. It feels new as we discover it for ourselves for the first time. Right? It's new here, but there isn't anything new in truth. So if you think that you have discovered something that you can't find anywhere else, no master has ever spoken of it, you should question it. Right? You should question it because there's nothing new in truth. And that's what's so cool about it. You know, when the doubting mind shows up, there's so much evidence. All of these individuals from different times throughout history, different cultures, using different language, clearly are all pointing to the same thing. And, you know, Helen Schuckman, although I don't think everything in the Course is 100% pure, I will say that right off the bat. But Helen Schuckman did not study Ramana Maharshi. You know, if you trace these things, these people, some of them studied each other a little bit, but their clarity always came from within, and they always came to the same clarity. That's got to be a truth. If it had been just me, then we'd be looking at what you call insanity. Truly, it's true. If it was just me, then that would mean I was insane. The only way we know I'm not insane is because it's not just me. It's been going on forever. I mean, Krishna, how long ago is Krishna? Right? I mean, that's before Jesus. I don't know which is first, Krishna or the Tao Te Ching. I don't know if anybody else knows. They're both kind of right in there about both before Jesus, you know. Buddha was before Jesus. And this stuff's been going. And what I love about the Tao Te Ching, okay, so Lao Tzu was how long ago? I don't know. I'll say 2,500 years. I could be off. But let's say Lao Tzu was 2,500 years ago, which is a long time ago. Do you know he refers to the ancient masters in that book? Who were they? We don't even know them, but they were masters before Lao Tzu, masters before Krishna, masters before Buddha. You see? And they were still saying the same thing. We might be onto something here. But we each have to realize it on our own. That's the whole thing. And this is why we're each got to be devoted to our spiritual practice in the way that we're guided to be devoted to that spiritual practice, because this has to come from within. It's the only way genuine realization hits us. You can't learn it with the conscious mind, because as we've seen today, it's beyond the conscious mind. All right, I have to start packing up and get to La Vida. So I won't see you next week because I think it's April, right? I think next week is the first week of April, which means Helen will be here. Is that true? Yeah. So I'll be back in 2 weeks. Okay. Bye.